Got to introduce the talent. Roundup family. Greetings, Roundup family. This is Chris Haskins with the realestateroundup.com. Every Friday, I have the honor and pleasure to hang out with attorney Jessica Segal. Good afternoon, Jessica.
Hi, hello everybody. Actually, I'm just going to close my door where I am so I don't disturb other people. So happy Friday.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful sunny day up here in the Hudson Valley, New York.
Okay.
And I'm glad we're talking today because I have just left. All morning, I've been in a continuing education class for attorneys that represent landlords, and attorneys in New York are required to take 24 hours of education every 2 years.
Okay.
So the topic today was really to explain the new Tenant Protection Act of 2019, which went into effect back in June. And I mentioned it, a few months ago, but today we had a whole seminar on it. And I mean, I do a lot of events for the Bar Association. I teach a lot of classes for the Bar Association. This room was packed.
Really?
It was standing room only. I've never seen it like that before because a lot of attorneys represent landlords, even if that's not their primary practice. You know, a lot of attorneys will pick up an eviction here or there for someone they know.
Yeah.
And this law, it was such a drastic change. So
what's the name of it again? A tenant?
Yes, the Tenant Protection Act of 2019 in New York. And it is, I mean, it can have catastrophic, honestly, effects to the mom and pop landlord. If you're a business and you own multiple doors and you have a property management company, you're going to expect that you're going to have certain amount of legal fees and different things when you have vacancies. You're a big business and you can absorb that. But for the mom and pop investor who maybe only has one or two units, and they really rely on the rent to pay the mortgage, they could face some serious financial troubles if a tenant doesn't pay. And so they basically enlarged the time period that a tenant can stay without payment. They've enlarged, the time frame with which you can get a court date. It used to, there's one of the things that shocked me today was also the landlord almost has no discretion even in how you're screening tenants anymore. The law says you cannot even ask if someone's been evicted before. You cannot deny someone an apartment because of a past eviction. I mean, there's a lot of. Now, of course, listen, you're going to use common sense how you're screening your tenants, and you're going to figure out quickly to just get a credit report, but don't ask certain questions. You're going to have to do your due diligence without asking questions. There are a lot of landlords who have never rented to Section 8 or other, they've never been screened, they've never been qualified. It's not necessarily a discrimination practice. They've never had tenants like that. So now if a tenant has Section 8 or a program, and you're basically like required to take that as payment and let the government come in and screen your apartment and make sure you're in compliance. It's no longer about who does the landlord want to pick. It's almost like, well, the tenant gets to decide where they want to live, and the landlord can be sued for discrimination for a variety of reasons, even if there's truly an innocent explanation. And the most of concern, of course, is there's a restriction now. You can only take 1 month's security. You can no longer 1 month's rent as security. So for people with newer properties, let's say your rent is $1,500 or $1,600, but you want $3,000 in security because you have a brand new kitchen and bathroom with all these fancy appliances and hardwood floors. You can't do that anymore. You could only take $1,500 as security. You can no longer charge a pet deposit. You have to just sort of incorporate all of these things into your rent. So what you're going to see is, in the past, where somebody charged $1,000 rent and then charged, $60 a month for a pet and $100 for water, and
Whatever.
Now you're just going to see advertisements where the rent is now $1,500. That's it. The landlords have to really take into consideration. They have to take into consideration this new law when setting their rent amount, because you can no longer get added rent in the context of an eviction.
Gotcha. So after that, you're telling me you can't come after them for damages after they're gone?
Right. Well, no, even in terms of non-payment, if you're trying to get eviction for non-payment, the only thing you can collect on is the actual rent amount, not things that are added rent. So those were some big takeaways today. It's so critical for landlords in New York to, if you don't have one, find an attorney that specializes in evictions, that is aware of these changes. I think all landlords need to update their leases. They need to be aware of the new timeline. It went from a 3-day notice for pay or quit to 14 days. 14
days. Explain it for my roundup family members that may not understand how big that is.
Sure. So it used to be.
The mortgage payment is due in 2 weeks after that.
That's right. So it used to be where you said, if they haven't paid rent, you sent a notice that said pay the rent within 3 days or we'll start an eviction proceeding. Mm-hmm. Now it's going to say you have 14 days to pay that late rent or we start an eviction proceeding. So landlords are basically adding 2 weeks of time onto their wait before they can even apply for an eviction.
You know what I'm gonna do with that? Just thinking out of the box. I'm gonna make my rents due on the 15th. You got to figure out a way to get around it. That way you got. Good gracious, so many things we have to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's and there's now a new notice requirement on top of that in New York now. Now you have to send a notice if, let's say, your rent is due on the 1st and it's late. In order to even lawfully begin the eviction process for non-payment, you have to send a notice on the 6th day of non-payment that says, it's like a reminder letter. Hey, you haven't paid your rent. Not the pay or quit, just a reminder letter. Like, hey, in case you forgot. Reminder. Yeah, it's based. What? Yeah, it's a 6-day reminder letter, and it must be sent by certified mail. Must be sent certified mail. And the fees for this are not recoverable. So add all this into your business expenses, right? Wow. So you send the reminder letter, then on top of it, then you're sending your 14-day now pay or quit notice.
Wow.
It's really scary for some landlords who don't have that cushion and they really rely on the rent to pay so now more than ever, 2 things are critical. Screening tenants. You must put major effort into screening your tenants, more so than ever.
Gotcha.
And to be very diligent about dates. Be very aware. It's just jump on it right away because it's going to take even longer.
Where is this stemming from, Jessica? How is this? Who's behind the scenes, so to speak, pushing this?
Right. So, I'll say this. From a practical perspective, I think we all pride ourselves on being good landlords. We provide safe, clean apartments. We make sure we provide good homes for our tenants. But there are a lot of landlords out there, just as in any profession, that are not providing a safe space. They're engaging in retaliatory tactics, an eviction if somebody makes a complaint because there's no heat or hot water. It's really designed to protect a lower income tenant who doesn't have the means to fight it and could be out on the street, there are some landlords that threaten violence, that will go into apartments and steal things and turn off electricity and turn off water.
Okay.
Life happens, life happens. Sometimes, sometimes a tenant's going to be a couple of days late. Maybe there's some emergency, things happen. It doesn't give a landlord the right to go in and take an Xbox because your rent's 2 days late. There are landlords who will do that. They'll just turn off the electricity.
Wow.
So, and then this lower income tenant who can't afford an attorney, how do they fight it? Right. So there are agencies. And so in New York, you have legal services, which provides, free attorneys to help people make sure that they're being protected as well from illegal conduct. So that's really what it's designed for. I think the problem, though, is what about these, landlords who do follow all the rules? And what happens when there's a tenant that takes advantage of them by using these laws to their benefit?
It sounds like the few are making it hard for the many, based on what you're saying.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I heard a few things today because, of course, I read the statute, I read the literature on it, the legislative intent. But today we heard from a judge, we heard from legal services, and we heard from attorneys who exclusively do landlord tenant, and it was really eye opening and alarming. To make sure that landlords have to, and this is why I highly recommend, just get an eviction attorney, on your speed dial. And so they know the rules, they give you the forms, they tell you exactly what to do and how. Because if you, like, for example, let's say you didn't send the letter certified mail, the tenant could walk into court and say, I didn't get the reminder letter, and the eviction gets dismissed, and the landlord has to now start the notice again
14 more
and
days,
have it personally served, and another court date, and start. So by that time you've gone 3 months without rent.
Scary.
It is. It is. And then also, we had conversations about limits placed on even what you can charge for a late fee, even month-to-month tenancies now. You have to give, in some cases, 60 or 90 days that you want to end your month-to-month.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole purpose of the month-to-month, was that within that 30 days, you're done. Yeah. And it doesn't, now they've extended it to up to 90 days in some cases. So it's really important that landlords stay diligent and up to date on the laws in their state and what the notice requirements are. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So I know I was like, oh, I'll go to the CLE. I already read the statute. I'll get my education credit. You get a good lunch and, whatever, and you participate in the community. And I mean, I got to tell you, it was very eye-opening. It was very eye-opening. And I have a lot of clients, real estate investors. I represent a lot of real estate investors that I'm going to be reaching out to. Just let them know, hey, listen, you need to be on top of this. And now we have to change the lease terms in your lease, all that stuff.
I'm just thinking, I don't even know anybody that does. I mean, I know I hear the stories from tenants.
Yeah.
And even people that have put applications in for my units, that want to rent from me. I've heard the stories, but I'm like, let me ask you, do you know any people landlords that treat these residents like the stories that we're hearing? Because I don't know anybody that does this stuff.
So no, thankfully, but I've sued them. Like, I mean, I've been exposed to landlords who are unethical.
Okay.
And I've sued them in civil litigation claims.
Wow.
But I personally don't see that or interact, because most of the time the legitimate landlords are not going to the real estate meetups or the investment association meetings. That's where I'm interacting with other landlords.
So, okay. Wow. Yeah. I'm glad it's not, because I don't know. I'm just trying to think. Anyway, the few are getting the laws changed. So were there any benefits for landlords? I guess it's all tenant protection. I'm just like, what? Any benefits for a landlord?
It really is. Landlords have so much risk for being sued, and what's scary is there are a lot of people who just, are really not trying to discriminate, but they just may not be aware of how the laws apply.
Yeah.
And you can actually be fined, and the landlord can be held, to have to pay damages to the tenant if the court finds that they were being, discriminating in how they picked out a tenant. And we have to remember, we still live in a free country. Like, as a property owner, shouldn't you be allowed to decide who you're renting your property to? So it really, right? You really have to be even more careful now as a landlord to follow the rules. You cannot use ignorance of the law as an excuse.
Good gracious. Well, round up, family. If you're just joining us, I'm hanging out with Attorney Tom with Jessica Segal, going over this craziness in New York. Is this just for the boroughs, or is this a statewide thing, Jay?
Statewide thing. I mean, this is the entire state. Now, of course, I'm sure the law came about because in the 5 boroughs, there's so much more room for discrimination and unethical practices. And there's also rent regulations in the boroughs that don't apply necessarily outside the state.
Yeah. Okay. Well, go ahead.
So the other big thing that happened this week that came up, really, I get asked a lot. I don't know if you deal with this in your state, but a lot of people want to know whether they can assign a contract or wholesale without an attorney. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of the Facebook forums that I'm in and rooms, you see conflicting things where people will say you absolutely don't need a lawyer to do an assignment of contract. Mm-hmm. And then you'll see, people that will say you absolutely do need a lawyer.
Okay.
And so in most of these chat rooms, they're not lawyers. They're usually just investors or real estate agents or whatever. So somebody had posted in there that you don't need an attorney at all for a closing whatsoever. And then somebody else posted it's illegal to do wholesaling in New York. So the guy that posted was like, I've called 3 attorneys. Everybody's given me the wrong answer.
Wow.
So even within the profession, people have a different interpretation of what the law is. Mm-hmm. So what my advice to people is, especially in different states, is, you don't necessarily have to ask just one person. You have to do your due diligence. Somebody who doesn't represent real estate investors may not necessarily have the answer. So just because they do evictions doesn't mean that they understand wholesaling and assignment. Okay. So it really is different. So so in New York, people have to be very careful that if you have to have, we're an attorney state. You have to have at least one attorney involved in the transaction. No, you cannot sell a house.
When you say the transaction, that's going to be the closing or the signing, because it's 2 different transactions.
Right. So it's going to be for the deed, the preparation of the deed.
That's the closing.
Right.
That's the closing part.
Right.
Closing portion of the deal.
Right. Okay. Typically with the mortgage or the note, things like that.
Yeah.
So can you wholesale? Absolutely. But you have to do it within the confines of the state that you're in and the law, And so, a lot of people will say, oh, you can't do wholesaling because you can't assign the contract. But that's, we know there's a way around that by doing a double closing.
Yep.
Right. So typically, if you're dealing with a traditional mortgage bank and they have a no assignment clause, then wholesaling may be an issue. But then you do a double close, right? Or if you are,
that's just an industry thing. I mean, that has nothing to do with your state.
Right.
So Bank REO is a Bank REO, whether it's in New York, Texas, Florida. I mean, I don't know.
Right. But so as far as the assignment portion,
Yeah.
if you're dealing with a private money source or for sale by owner, and you're not dealing with those traditional banks, sure, you can do an assignment in New York, but you have to be careful. If as an agent, a real estate agent, a lot of investors are also real estate agents, that you're not engaging in the unauthorized practice of law by trying to prepare the documents yourself, or that if you're not an agent and you're just doing these wholesale and assignments yourself, and maybe you've got a deed template and you're doing all these things yourself, you have to be careful that you're not engaging in the unauthorized practice of a real estate agent.
Wow.
Okay. So you can get yourself in trouble that way.
Did you say something about a state? Well, I thought, well, here it was if you had an equitable interest, you could just sell that to another buyer. If you have an interest in the property, which would be your purchase and sale agreement, and you're just selling that interest to another person for an assignment.
You're talking about, but who's preparing the deed?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't have the deed. Yeah, well, the attorney prepares the deeds in Virginia. I don't know how it goes.
Okay, right. So I guess the short answer is, you have to be aware of what the law is in your particular state. And the reason it's even more concerning is I was actually watching a video this morning. Another investor said that in Illinois, they just passed a law making wholesaling illegal.
Yeah.
You can, for more than two, you cannot legally wholesale more than 2 properties a year, something to that effect. And so, and that's because they're trying to control the industry. Like they want agents to be doing the deal, somebody who's licensed, and not just. The concern is that investors will take advantage of homeowners. That's what the concern is. So people view the wholesaling assignment world as a bunch of scammers, and we know that's not true. I mean, of course, like any other profession, could there be issues? Of course, but
wow.
And I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure people in Illinois will figure out the proper way, to do it. Because basically, the concept is, if you're not a licensed agent or broker, you shouldn't be getting a fee for finding the house and selling it to somebody else. And that's essentially what wholesaling is, right? You're finding the deal and you're selling the deal to somebody else.
Yeah, that's terrible.
So it's same thing in New York. You have to be careful if and make sure you're not engaging in the unauthorized practice of real estate agent without a license or a practice of law without a license. So
tricky.
Just, yeah, right. Now, but that's what attorneys are here for. And I get that people, look, if you have a very small margin of profit with the wholesale deal, you don't necessarily want to pay attorney's fees. But at the end of the day, all of that can be worked out. If you can find an attorney who's willing to work with you, especially if you're in a volume business. Yeah. Look, if you're an investor who typically, is buying 20 houses a year, you can work out a deal with an attorney. They'll give you reduced fees for high volume business. Like, I mean, a lot of attorneys do that for closings. That's how the banks get deals, because they're giving these law firms hundreds of closings a year. So they're going to charge less. It's no different.
I see Jamon down here. He has a good point. Is it a wholesaling? He's saying Sam's Club is doing the same thing. They're buying them from the distributor, marking them up. What would be he's got a good point. What's the difference? I mean, we're just wholesaling houses. They're wholesaling candy bars. Is there a difference just in your reasoning? I would say, I don't know.
No, I mean, I agree. It's I really do agree. In theory, that's the same concept. The issue is there's risk is so much higher. The risk, right? There's a big difference. There's the cost of the candy bar or the toilet paper from Costco versus this is a house.
Yeah. And
so the state wants to make sure that licensed professionals are protecting the homeowners. And listen, it's like anything else. You can sell your house for sale by owner. You don't have to use a broker,
Yeah.
right? But an attorney has to be involved in the closing process at some point.
I'm gonna tell you, I always thought they were gonna be coming up to wholesalers, Jay. When I used to see, I mean, I've seen $100,000 wholesale fees. When you really think about it, Jay, okay, say you got a house
Right.
under contract for 50, right? You sell it for
Yeah.
100. On that transfer, the deed says the original 50. So from what I've seen, that other 50 doesn't go on record for real estate taxes. I've always thought the municipalities would come after the wholesalers because if you really look at it, the real estate taxes do not they don't collect them because the deed is on the original purchase price. So when you mark it up, they don't know that 50 is going to, that 50 is just profit for the wholesaler. It doesn't go on the deed. They say that deed, well, in Virginia, the deed still, and the HUD still for 50,000, that contract price. The assignment fee doesn't go towards the actual transaction.
Right. It's like anything else. Almost every professional industry is regulated by the state in some way. So I can see the concern there. But at the end of the day, wholesalers are providing a good service.
I think so too.
And why shouldn't they be paid for it? But my concern for wholesalers is just make sure that you are following your state requirements.
I see. Real quick, Jerry brought up a good point here too, and I'm gonna let you go because I got to get out of here. Jerry's saying houses are assets, candy bars are commodities. I don't know about that one though. We look at houses as commodity. I mean, it can be an asset, but they're just commodity. I mean, we're looking at the best price. You all ready? Mm-hmm, yep. Jessica, let's do this. We got to get out of here. I know your time. Just final thoughts on people that are getting into the industry, and especially up there with wholesaling. And good gracious, I feel like you can't do nothing up there in New York. I'm scared to come up there.
Yeah, I know. It's really going to make some people rethink. I think it's going to make some people rethink in being a landlord, investing in real estate. There's a lot of people who are going to turn around and just put their money into REITs or money, other ways of being involved in real estate.
Yeah. All right, Jessica, thank you for your time. We got to get out of here.
All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.
Round up.
Bye.
Make sure I'll be in Washington, D.C. this weekend. If you want to hook up, please shoot me a direct message. We'll be with Eric Thomas till Sunday, and then we'll be in North Carolina the following week. Round up. Please shoot me a direct message if you're interested in hanging out and getting some coffee. Peace.
You're taking the show on the road. Have a good weekend.
All right, Jay.
Take care.